Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the GG Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Noah and Mitchell. Today, for this episode, we're going to do a bit of a rookie mock draft as the Dynasty season starts to ramp up and you guys are finishing up your rookie drafts. We thought we'd give you our thoughts. And again, we are doing our scoring settings are half PPR, one quarterback, no tight end premium. So that will obviously impact our rookie ADP a little bit. But with that, let's get underway.
All right. So I'm going to be picking out of the odd team draft spots, and Noah will be picking out of the even draft spots. With the first overall pick, I'm taking Jeremiah Love. I think that this pick is pretty standard. I think you could take Jeremiah. I think you could take Carnell Tate if you were really wide receiver needy, but I think Jeremiah Love is going to be the best prospect in this class. He was a special running back at Notre Dame, and I think he has all the signs of a guy who's going to be a pro and really going to be a great running back for a long time. Little concerned about Arizona as a landing spot, but honestly, I don't think it'll impact him much. So I think he should be fine for the long run. So I'm taking Jeremiah Love at 1.
Well, that makes it easy for me too. I'm going to take Carnell Tate. Probably the best wide receiver in the draft class, has the best situation. He's clearly the number one wide receiver in his offense, has a good coach, has a good quarterback in Cam Ward, and really not much to debate about there at pick 2.
I would agree. Whoever is getting Cam Ward, in my opinion, had to be the best of those 3 receiver options. All right. Now, out of the 3 spot for me here, I'm going to go against the ADP a little bit. And I'm going to take Mekhi Lemon at 3. So Jordan Tyson is projected to have a little better season this year. I think that's just because Mekhi Lemon is in more of a crowded room in Philly. But I think in the long run, he has a real shot to be the wide receiver one. And I think if you go back last year and look at some of those USC highlights, he was the real deal. So, my opinion, I would go Mekhi Lemon here.
At pick 4, I'm going to take Jordan Tyson. Just take whoever's there between Lemon and Tyson. Tyson does have a bit of an injury history, but a very talented player. Should be a great situation with Tyler Shuck and not much target competition besides Chris Olave in New Orleans.
I would agree with that. And especially with Chris Olave needing a contract extension, that is another interesting piece there. And I would agree with the top 4. Pretty much Jeremiah Love and Carnell Tate are going to be swapping somewhere between 1 and 2. Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon will be 3 and 4. I think that should be pretty standard. At pick 5, I'm going to take the other Notre Dame running back. I think Jadarian Price is in a really great spot going to Seattle. They still have a good offensive line from that Super Bowl team. The void from Kenneth Walker needs to be filled by somebody. And I just don't think that Zach Sharpen is very good. So I really like Jadarian Price to take that next step. I think that he's going to be their starting running back. I think he's going to have a really good year. So, and I think he should be good for the net for really his whole career. So, I think Jadarian Price at 5.
Here at 6 is going to be the first time I actually deviate from the ADP a little bit. I'm going to take Kenyon Sadiq. One of the best tight end prospects in recent years, was an absolute beast at Oregon. Not too much target competition on the Jets aside from Garrett Wilson.
I would agree with that pick as well.
That would be drafted.
Oh yeah, I got it. I would agree with the Kenyon Sadiq pick. Out of these guys, I think really once we get behind Jadarian Price, picks 6 through 10 are going to be a lot more personal preference, and I think it's Sadiq's upside as a tight end is just higher than Concepcion, Cooper, Mendoza, Denzel Boston, Stowers, any of these names in this group. So that's who I would take here as well.
And one other thing about Sadiq is that usually tight ends, like running backs, especially in the earlier rounds, are more likely to hit. Wide receivers are probably closer to 50-50. And tight ends and running backs are usually a more sure thing, especially in the earlier rounds. So I think Sadiq's a pretty safe pick there at 6.
I would agree. With this next pick, this really gets iffy for me between the 2 Cleveland receivers and Omar Cooper. All three of these guys were guys that I really liked going into the draft, especially Concepcion and Omar Cooper. However, I just think the landing spots, Concepcion going to the same team as Denzel Boston, that being the Browns, and Omar Cooper going to a place where he's probably going to be the third target in that lineup is just really tough. So for me here, I would take KC Concepcion. I think that he should have a good career. I know it's Cleveland, but that would probably be, in my opinion, the safest pick here at 7.
Here at 8, I'm probably just going to take Fernando Mendoza. Like Mitchell just said, I don't love Omar Cooper landing at the Jets, and I would just rather let someone else take Cooper or Boston, the last two wide receivers in that tier. And I think Mendoza should be in a great situation with Clint Kubiak in Las Vegas. He's got some great weapons in Genty and Bowers, and they just revamped the offensive line by adding Linderbaum at center, so should be in it for a great career and should be locked and loaded at quarterback. Maybe not this year, but certainly by year 2.
I really like that pick there. I think if you need a quarterback, you kind of have to pick your spot. And Fernando Mendoza in this class is going to be the best option by a decent margin, in my opinion. Just with the other quarterback options are going to be Ty Simpson, who won't play for a few years, and then Carson Beck. So I really like that pick for Mendoza. Here at 9, I'm going to deviate from Omar Cooper and Denzel Boston as well. And I'm going to take Eli Stowers. So this is a guy coming out of Vandy who had a great career there, almost more of a receiver than a tight end. But I think with the Eagles, I think they'll develop him more into a pass catching tight end, kind of taking Dallas Goedert's role, similar to how Dallas Goedert took Zach Ertz's role not that long ago. So I really think that Eli Stowers could be a special tight end here in a year or two, especially with the new offensive coordinator there. I think he'll get a sizable amount of reps. So I would take Eli Stowers here, kind of looking at the future production. I just like him more than Cooper or Denzel Boston.
Here at pick 10 is probably when I'm just going to double up on Cooper and Boston. I don't love the situation for either of them, but there's certainly a bit of a talent drop off after the last two guys in this tier. So I'm just going to double up on Boston and Cooper here and hope one of them pans out.
I really like that decision as well. I feel like Denzel Boston has a chance to be a special red zone receiver in the NFL, and Omar Cooper was really good at Indiana last year. So now as we get into round 2, this draft becomes really round 2 is where you have to make a lot of personal decisions here about kind of guys that you think can pan out, guys who might not pan out. With this pick, I'm going to take Chris Bell. Little bit of a riskier pick, but the Dolphins are just really light at receiver, and I just think that Chris Bell has a chance to be a huge piece of that offense this year and for years to come. So I'm going to take Chris Bell there.
Here at pick 13, I'm going to take Elijah Surratt. I think with John Harbaugh leaving, I think that Ravens offense could become a lot more pass heavy. And there's really not too much target competition in the wide receiver room besides Zay Flowers. Not to mention Mark Andrews is getting up there in age on the last year or two of his contract. And I really liked what I saw at Indiana with Surratt, and I think he could be very talented at the pro level.
I like the Surratt pick. Really, my only concern is the fact that they also took Jacoby Lane in the draft as well. But I think that we could see a really good year of Elijah Surratt and good years to come as well. For me here, this is where I'm going to take Jeremy Bernard. And honestly, I think I was seriously debating taking him a pick or two earlier. I think this is a guy I know I've talked about on this podcast before, but I think this is a guy who has a real shot to be Pittsburgh's number 1 option in 2 years. I just think that they'll probably move on from DK Metcalf as his contract gets harder to keep, and I just don't think Michael Pittman really got traded there with the assumption that he'll be there long term. And I think if you go back and watch some of his highlights from him at Alabama, I think he's going to be a guy who's going to touch the ball a lot and going to be a big force. Maybe not in year 1, but as that team starts to develop in the future, I really like Jeremy Bernard.
Here at 15, I'm leaning towards Zachariah Branch. Had a great couple of years in college, and the Falcons wide receiver room is pretty devoid of talent aside from Drake London and Kyle Pitts, especially with Darnell Mooney leaving. So I like Zachariah Branch. I think there's upside potential for him, considering that the talent or the target distribution right now is fairly concentrated between two or three guys at Atlanta.
I would agree with that as well. I Again, this is a guy who really had a chance to be a first or a second round pick before he got arrested this past offseason. So he is one of those guys. He had some off the field issues, which kind of drove down his draft stock. As such, the Falcons got him pretty cheap. So he's kind of a name to watch here. Um, Now, as we get into these next couple of picks, we've kind of had our run on receivers go, and it's going to be a little bit more running back focused, I think, over these next couple of picks. Um, I think I am going to take Jonah Coleman here and follow the ADP. I know the Broncos have a really crowded room at running back, but I think that in the middle of the second round, for a guy who's a really good third down back in college, I think this is where I'd probably take him. I know you probably know a little bit more about him than I do, so if you have anything you want to say for Jonah Coleman.
Yeah, I would just, if you're taking Jonah Coleman, you have to temper your expectations. He's probably not going to do anything that significant. Is still J.K. Dobbins' running back room to lose. Obviously, that's J.K. Dobbins, so he will get hurt at some point between weeks 8 and 12 this season. But when that happens, it's probably just going to be an ugly running back committee between Harvey and Coleman at that point. But in round two here, especially in this 26 class, that's a bit weaker. He's a good shot to take, just because he's on a good offense, good run heavy offense. So good shot to take, good draft capital as well. So that's all I have to say about Coleman there.
Yeah.
And then here at pick 17, I'm going to take Nick Singleton. I'm going to take him over Emma Johnson just because I like Nick Singleton as a prospect more. Obviously, he had that injury 2 years ago that really is the reason that he went that late in the draft. But he's going to a pretty empty room. I believe Tony Pollard is on the last year of his contract in Tennessee, and the only other running back on the depth chart there that's going to give Singleton any issue is Tyjae Spears, but I don't believe in Tyjae Spears at all. I don't think he's very talented. I think there are serious health concerns given his lack of an ACL, so I think Nick Singleton could really surprise some people this year as a bit of a sleeper and get some significant carries either behind Pollard or potentially taking the starting job at some point in the season.
I really like that pick. That's who I was probably going to take with my next pick here. For me, I'm going to go receiver here. I'm going to take Chris Brazzell. This is a guy out of Tennessee who kind of fits that like really spread out passing game that Tennessee ran in college. I think he has all the makings of like an outside receiver for Carolina, which should take some of the pressure off of Ted McMillan and Jalen Coker. But this is a guy that I think really lines up as a good X receiver, again, on a team who had um, former Buccaneers offensive coordinator is now calling the plays there. I really feel pretty comfortable taking Chris Brazzell, so that's who my pick would be here.
Here at pick 19, I'm going to, I think, take Malachi Fields. He's probably the last guy that I would take before I started reaching. He's probably going to have a pretty open wide receiving room and path to targets this year with Malik Neighbors slated to miss at least the first half of the season as he comes back from his ACL. The only other significant pass catchers on the Giants right now are Theo Johnson, the tight end, Isaiah Likely, and Odell Beckham Jr. So pretty clear path to getting some target share there in New York. But a John Harbaugh offense is probably going to be pretty run heavy. So the sky is not exactly the limit for Malachi Fields, but certainly a good pick here at the end of round two.
I like it. So for me here, as we get into pick 20 and pick 21, this is really, it gets more into a personal preference point of the draft. So it really gets a little bit tougher to make picks through here. I mean, you're starting to get into day 3 wide receivers, day 3 running backs, and just a couple guys who don't have a clear path to starting. My first one of these two picks is going to be the best available guy here, and that is Emmett Johnson. Um, Was a good running back in college out of Nebraska. Was getting, I mean, he was in the conversation as one of the best running backs in the country at one point. Going to Kansas City after being in the position that he kind of got put in with them taking Kenneth Walker makes this a lot tougher. But I really think that Emmett Johnson is going to be a very good piece here. So I would take him to kind of, and that way you'd be pairing Jeremiah Love and Emmett Johnson. So you have in my opinion, you have a serious case at getting two of the best receivers in the country. Um, that being said, I don't know that I would want to have three running backs in my rookie draft unless I was really short. So as we kind of look through some of these picks here, I am going to take Dazon Stribling here with this next pick. Um, I really think that he's going to fit well into that Kyle Shanahan scheme, especially coming out of Ole Miss. The Lane Kiffin passing scheme, I feel like, is very similar. And we're looking at a guy who he is going to have to compete to start, but he's a little bit bigger of a receiver. He doesn't really fit as well into that Deebo Samuel type role. But I think, especially looking to the future on a team that Mike Evans is getting up there in age, Ricky Pierce also had some injury issue, and then Christian Kirk is currently the other guy that they think is going to start. I think Dazon Stribling has a real shot to be wide receiver 1 or 2 on that team by as late as this year, early next year. So that would be my pick here at the start of round 3.
Here at the second pick of round 3, I'm going to deviate a little bit from the ADP. I'm going to take Oscar Delp. Obviously, this year he might not do a lot sitting behind Jawan Johnson, but Jawan Johnson's 29, likely to leave in free agency after this year, and I think Delp is very talented. Similar pick to Elijah Stowers a few picks ago. Very talented tight end who might have to sit a year, but tight ends usually don't break out until a year 2 or 3 anyway, so that's not a major concern. And in round 3, I'm not looking to get immediate production out of these guys anyway for my fantasy lineup. I'm looking to just take whoever I think is most talented at this point and wait for the upside to happen.
I really like that assessment. With my pick here at the third pick in round 3, I'm going to take Ted Hurst here. This pick, if he didn't go to Tampa Bay, I'd feel a little worse about it. But I think considering where he ended up, he's in a spot where he'll be slated to start really as early as week 1. He had a really good career at Georgia State. And I personally just think that as really the only tall outside receiver on that team, he's going to get an opportunity to make plays early and often. And I just think that that's a good sign for his career. So I'm taking Ted Hurst with that pick.
Here at the pick 3-4, I'm again going to deviate a little bit from the ADP. I'm going to take Bryce Lance. I think given the injury history of the other 2 wide receivers in that Saints wide receiving room with Olave, who's currently looking for a contract, and Tyson, who's still struggling with injuries, I believe, I think Lance is a great pick. He was very talented. Obviously went to a bit of a smaller school at North Dakota State, but the production was there, and I think should either Tyson or Olave get hurt, he could have a real shot at getting some meaningful gains and targets. And it's also good to pair him with Tyson, so that way you get a little bit of insurance should Tyson get hurt.
I would agree with that. Here at receiver, with my next pick, I'm taking Antonio Williams out of Clemson. I think that going to Washington, a place where the receiver room just isn't very deep, I think that he has a real shot to break out in the next year or 2. So I think he was really talented in college. And in my opinion, at this point of the draft, that would be who I would take.
Here at the 3-6, I'm probably just going to take the best player on the board in Ty Simpson. Obviously, not going to get any immediate production out of him, but getting the successor to Matthew Stafford in that Rams offense with Sean McVay and Puka Nacua is a pretty safe bet to make. And at pick 36, there's not very many sure things at Hall left, so might as well get a top 15 overall quarterback and just wait for the future.
I really like that pick. He had to go at some point. With my next pick, I'm going to take Kaytron Allen, who is the teammate of Nick Singleton, who went in round 2. I really think that he had a huge year last year at Penn State. And it wasn't that long ago that Nick Singleton and Katron Allen were getting compared to Jeremiah Love and Price, his backup. So I really think that the two Penn State running backs, not super far behind Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in terms of talent. And Katron Allen going to Washington, he just doesn't have a ton of competition. He has to compete with Bill Krosky Merritt, and he has to compete with Rashad White. So I think that everything's kind of opening up for Katron Allen to have a real shot to get significant touches later this year or next year. So that would be my pick here.
I like that pick, especially since Christian McCaffrey not getting any younger. And after all the touches he had last season, I think he's definitely due for a bit of a lighter workload this year. Here at pick 38, I'm going to do another little bit of a deviation from ADP. I'm going to take Eli Raridan, the tight end that the Patriots got. The only guy ahead of him right now in the tight end room is Hunter Henry, who I believe is leaving after this year. He's on the last year of his contract. And Henry's also up there in age, so I think Reardon could either get a very good shot to start next year or potentially this year should Hunter Henry get hurt. And that's a pretty pass-heavy offense in New England, so a lot of potential there for Eli Reardon.
I really like that pick. With my last pick here at pick 9, I would like to take Jacoby Lane. He'll probably go a little earlier than this in a lot of the mocks, but kind of to how you talked about Elijah Surratt earlier, I think Jacoby Lane fits this as well. A guy who really was considered one of the most talented receivers in this class at one point, and then got overshadowed a little bit by Mekhi Lemon as the season went on. I really think that he is talented enough to break out in that Ravens receiver room, standing at 6'4". I really think that that's going to help him as well, considering that Zay Flowers is a much smaller receiver. And I just think that Jacoby Lane, if you can get him here, I just think there's too much value. So that's what I would take here.
With the last pick in the draft, I'm going to again do a little bit of a reach. I'm going to take Justin Jolly, the Broncos tight end out of North Carolina State. The only guy ahead of him right now in the tight end room is Evan Ingram, who was pretty disappointing last year and is also on the last year of his contract and is also up there in age. Who I believe he's either 30 or 31. Yep, 31 years old, so up there in age, last year of his contract. I think Justin Jolly has a lot of potential there in that offense that would love to feature a tight end. We know Sean Payton loves to work through the tight end, and he still hasn't found that guy yet. So should something happen to Evan Ingram this year, or maybe even just Jolly beats him up for the starting job at some point, I don't think that is removed from the realm of possibility, and I think Justin Jolly could have a lot of potential this year. But a bit of a homer pick for me.
I really like that pick. So that's going to cover kind of as far as we're going to get into the rookie draft, with a lot of drafts being 3 rounds. Unfortunately, to set up a sleeper mock, it was just going to be a little bit longer. So this is realistically kind of where the draft was going to end for us here. Are there any picks that you think you might have changed your various spots, or like one team where you're like, wow, really think that this team kind of won the draft out of these 10?
No, I don't think there's a team that by far won the draft. One thing I'd probably change is I would definitely take Oscar Delp in round 2, I think. Honestly, at any point in round 2 after Denzel Boston, I would be fine taking Oscar Delp. I think he's that talented. But other than that, I would say one guy still available to be drafted in Damon Claiborne. I could see taking over a few of the guys in the draft, like Ty Simpson, especially in one quarterback league. But once you get to round 3, it's pretty much, there's not really any strict ADP to follow there. It's just personal preference at that point. But I do think Damon Claiborne could be in for a good year as well, and that pretty wide open running back room in Minnesota after Aaron Jones, who's up there in age.
Yeah. I like that. I think that the most surprising guy that we didn't take out of these 3 rounds would probably be the guy with the highest ADP currently, which is Mike Washington. He went to the worst possible spot in this draft. Kind of the same thing with Emmett Johnson. I think there's a world where either these guys are first round picks just off the talent. But again, Emmett Johnson is now going to be handcuffed by Kenneth Walker. Mike Johnson is going to be handcuffed by Ashton Genty. This was the most athletic prospect in the class at running back, and I was a little bit surprised that he fell all the way to the fourth round. But I think this is a guy. It may take a year or two for him to really see any touches. Probably going to take him going to a new team to actually see a significant role. But if he gets traded, he would be worth a lot, in my opinion. Um, Another guy who's in kind of a similar position, one of my favorite prospects in this entire draft, is Kalen Black out of Indiana. Was one of the running backs on the national championship team. He went to the 49ers, which isn't too big of a surprise. Just he really fits their West Coast running scheme well, and he's a very good athlete. So he's a little small, which I think is part of the reason that he went later at just 5'9", and he's already 24. But he's really a guy. Again, this is just a loaded running back room of the guys with camp invites, and you go Christian McCaffrey, Jordan James is a good running back. Kyle Juszczyk, he's a fullback, but still a valuable piece of that team. Then Isaac Garendo is kind of a guy that Kellen Black could end up turning into if he gets stuck on a place where he really doesn't touch the ball. But I think I could comp him as high as a version of Aaron Jones if he gets the opportunity to touch the ball. And again, Christian McCaffrey's on the wrong side of 30. So someone's going to have to take over that team once he retires or leaves. So that would be another guy who didn't get picked through our 3 rounds that I think is good enough too.
I think those are both good mentions. And honestly, in one quarterback, you could probably take both those guys over Ty Simpson.
Yeah. It really just depends on if your team needs a quarterback or not, just because Ty Simpson's probably not going to actually be relevant enough to start for 2 to 3 years.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, other than that, I really don't see anyone worth mentioning that we didn't take. This is a pretty light draft class compared to a couple of the more recent ones, but still some talented guys in here for sure.
For sure. I think there's a few random tight end prospects that'll probably get to touch the ball a little bit, but I think it's more of just that gets more into a personal preference kind of thing. Probably be a waiver pickup once we kind of figure out who's going to get to touch the ball and who really doesn't see a role on their personal teams.
Yep.
I feel like there was one other guy I wanted to mention. Yeah, I like the Damani Claiborne pick. I think that guy has a real shot to touch the ball. If you need a guy, if you're doing like a 5 round draft or something, Eli Heinrich is an interesting guy if he makes the team in Pittsburgh. Just because if he does make the team, he probably won't play any special teams really. So I think that he has a shot to actually get to touch the ball. He's listed as a running back, might end up being a receiver, but I think he could see a very small role if you're in a much deeper league.
I do like the pick. I am intrigued by Eli Henrich. Would love for him to get a shot there.
I would too.
Adam Randall is also a guy you could take in deeper leagues. The running back who went to Baltimore. With it being Justice Hills last year and probably Derrick Henry's last year at 34. Randall could get some meaningful snaps if anything happens to Henry at some point in the season.
I really like that. One of my personal favorite running backs who's really didn't get drafted, which I was a little surprised by, is Jamal Haynes. He went to the Bengals. I don't really think he'll make the team, but he was really good at Georgia Tech, so that would be another name. If you get really low on the depth chart, if you're really desperate for a rookie. Same thing at quarterback with Talon Green, who went to the Browns. I think he has all the talent in the world. Unfortunately, he's stuck on the Browns, so he probably won't play ever, but you never know. So, but if he gets traded or cut at some point and goes to a better team, he's a guy who is a very intriguing prospect. So, it's another option as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a good option in deeper leagues. But Other than those guys, I really don't see anyone at this point worth mentioning.
I would agree. Cade Klubnik could technically start. I don't know in what scenario you would need to start Cade Klubnik, but technically he could, especially with the allegations against Geno Smith. So you never know. But yeah, I feel like that pretty much covers the bulk of our names we wanted to go over.
Yep, no one else I feel like mentioning here.
So this is approximately how we would draft the first 3 rounds of a Dynasty rookie draft. So you can always go off the sleeper ADP, but there's a few things that I just personally don't really agree with. Like I think the Mike Washington is too high for being a guy without a situation. Um, like in it's tough to sit in a situation like the Raiders with no offensive line and dealing with Ashton Genty. I think he's in a really tough spot. Like Le'Veon Moss is here, but he's out for the year already. So actually, I think he retired. Yeah, don't take Le'Veon Moss. I don't really know why he's the second best running back available after our 3 rounds, but Kalen Black, Damon Clay Warren, Adam Randall, Eli Heinrich. There's a couple names here. Receiver, Kevin Coleman might be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we kind of covered most of these, so I think that'll probably end it here for us for the episode for the week. If there's anything you guys want to see in a future video, feel free to comment that below. Remember to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next video.